Excelsior!
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 18 of Excelsior, the penultimate episode, right? That's how I use that term?
Okay. Good. I was going to say good use of that word.
All right. Kind of negates it being good use if I had to check on it, but joining me here is Jack Martin.
Good to be here on the penultimate episode. For those that don't know, the second to last is what that means.
Yes. Pat Maroney will not be joining us this week. He's on assignment again. But we have one more episode in the books about comic books. Mm-hmm. So stick around for that one. But I will be leading the charge today. I'm your host, Christian Buckley. We got a new Marvel movie to talk about today.
That's right.
Which feels...
the 21st?
23rd.
23rd? Oh, jeez.
23rd. I think Endgame was the 22nd.
Yeah, that sounds right.
So that's crazy. 23 movies in one saga. That's more than any other thing I can think of right now.
Yeah, I think it clearly beats anything else. I can't think of anything.
Like Bond doesn't count, right? Because those are all contained. It's not one overarching thing. They're
all rebooted here and there, so yeah, I wouldn't count that.
It is quite a beast. So before we talk about Spider-Man Far From Home, though, there was another release of a Marvel film that came out between our last episode and today. The re-release of Avengers Endgame to try to get it to pass Avatar. Sadly, I guess could be sad. Some people could not be sad. I don't know. Didn't pass it. It only got a couple extra million in. Honestly, I was kind of expecting it to not perform as well as the marketing was pushing it to, because I saw like everybody, like that entire cast was like, seeing it again, go see it again. And I was like, I know you're trying so hard, but I feel like this isn't the last re-release, because I do think there's a conversation to be had about award season for this movie. So I can see it in the fall. I don't know.
I think we'll see it again, but I also thought it was too early to when it was actually released, because it was still in theaters when the re-release came out. So I feel like that was kind of confusing for people.
Yeah, I saw it this third time the day before it got announced. So clearly there were still showings. Mm-hmm. But I think you're right. And I don't know if that was like an anxiety because of Far From Home and like kind of negating people caring about Endgame, because it's like we're already moved on. But I don't know. There was a little bit of footage. I want to read through the description of it, courtesy of cnet.com. And if you think it's bad or too boring, just tell me to pass, and then we'll start talking about Spider-Man. Okay?
Okay.
So, the Avengers Endgame re-release with extra content, 7 minutes of extra content via whatever marketing said this. There's 7 minutes of extra content in the film. Before the movie, which I think we saw before, there's a new message from Tom Holland saying that there's a preview for the film that will play after Endgame, talking about Far From Home. And then Anthony Russo walks in and tells you to stick around for something extra in the credits. So, then we go into a Stan Lee tribute, which, exactly from CNET, their words say, the first special something turns out to be a lovely tribute to the late Marvel legend Stan Lee, in which he talks about he just wrote comics to pay the rent. Okay, it's basically a tribute package to Stan Lee and his involvement on the MCU sets, working with directors like James Gunn, Taika, Kenneth Branagh, Jon Favreau, just having interactions with them. Also, a few cast members like I almost called him Thor, Chris Hemsworth, Tom Holland, a few other people. And at the end, it says, "Stan, we love you 3000." Obviously, trying to get that emotional heartstring moment right there.
Oh, yeah.
Then there's a deleted scene, which could have been several different things. Notably, there were those rumors, and, well, this was, like, true. Catherine Langford of 13 Reasons Why was cast in a mystery role. She would have been playing, and they shot this, Morgan Stark, an older Morgan Stark, talking to Tony after he snapped. Similar to how Thanos saw Gamora at the end of Infinity War. Could have been that. Could have been an extra Thanos scene. Could have been a funeral for Black Widow. Could have been anything else. But what we did get is a scene, not fully like animated, not fully detailed, of Hulk saving some children from a burning building. He tells them to get in the satellite dish, like a big satellite dish, carries them out of the building, gets a phone call, and that would have preceded the scene in the diner where he meets up with the team again to talk about bringing the band back together. And I think, it says it's about like 20 seconds, and it's very early CGI Hulk. So, like, lips weren't fully moving. It looked like a really old, weird 3D render.
So that's it.
That's it.
That is incredibly disappointing.
Yeah, and then... Oh, sorry. And then after that, it was the first 2 minutes of Far From Home.
Okay.
So it was the introduction in Mexico with Hill and Fury.
Mm-hmm.
So, this is just a weird package, I feel like.
Yeah, I don't... If I knew that going into it, and I didn't see it in theaters again during this re-release, but if I knew that going before, I don't think I would have gone to see it again for that purpose.
It's
agree. Kind of not a lot going on. I would have loved to have seen the Catherine Langford deleted scene, because I think that's fascinating. That's
just so strange that I like. If they wanted me to be sold on going for something, I think it would have been that. I know like people's expectations went wild with what it could have been. Like people thought it could have been the X-Men or Fantastic Four. Like 2 weeks after the last X-Men movie came out, they were expecting like the rebooted X-Men to get teased or something. I mean, I want to see Endgame again in theaters if I can, just one more time, just to have that like that last act one more time on a giant screen, so I don't have to just see it on TV every time I want to watch it.
That's true. I agree with you. I think it'll probably be re-released in theaters, maybe closer to Oscar season. There has been some buzz for this. I don't think we'll definitely won't see this in best film category, but I could be wrong. We saw Black Panther, but I think that was for more cultural purposes and reasons for that movie. But who knows? Maybe we'll see Robert Downey Jr. in a best acting role.
Yeah, I could also see him get a Lifetime Achievement Award just for the role of Tony Stark.
This is the role that anyone has played for the longest, right?
I think so. It was previously Hugh Jackman and Wolverine,
right? For
superhero movies, at least. But yeah, Robert Downey Jr. upwards of 9 times at this point. Yeah, I can maybe see an argument for Best Picture the same way like Return of the King got pushed. But yeah, I definitely think they're post Black Panther award winning Marvel. I think they're gonna try and push for at least nominations for this one in categories outside of what these kind of movies typically get nominated for. So expect to see Endgame again later this year, and expect it to probably cross Avatar by then, because there's going to be a hunger for the MCU, because it would have been about 5 months since the last movie, which was Far From Home. But speaking of Far From Home, do you want to hop into the review discussion of Far From Home?
Let us do it.
So this is going to be spoiler filled, but quick like tweet length opinion. Did you like it? What's your overall thoughts? Spoiler free.
Tweet length opinion. I left the theater mostly negative, and I want to see it again because there are some things I liked about it and some things that I really did not like about it.
That's interesting. This is going to be an interesting discussion because I don't know if you saw my tweet.
I don't know if I did.
So I left the theater, and I think the way I phrased it in my actual tweet was, I modified slightly from the original intent just so I didn't sound like I was making this bold claim, but it's the Spider-Man movie that I always wanted to see, asterisk, after I saw this version of the character. But yeah, I loved it. I really, really enjoyed this film. So that was the spoiler-free part. If you haven't seen it yet, go see it. Come back. But where would you like to start? You want to go in order? I got a few notes.
I have some notes. If you want to go in order, we can. I just have a lot of general, I guess more general and specific opinions on some things I didn't like and some things that I did like.
I got a structural thing I want to bring up.
Okay.
So, I don't know what it was. Well, I do know what it was, I think. It felt kind of long, but not in a bad way.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was because it was strange because it didn't feel like a traditional 3-act film, even though there's a lot of that in there.
Mm-hmm.
And I made this comparison in a different conversation, and I don't know if it's because we started reading comics more regularly. It felt like I read 4 issues of a Spider-Man arc with how this was set up, because there was so much globetrotting, so much different traveling, or so many different locations, so many different set pieces, and I really loved the character moments, and it felt like the action was just kind of shoved in when it would work.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think that was an issue for me personally.
I did definitely feel that a different sort of structure to this movie, like what you were saying. It felt like at the point where Spider-Man hands Edith to Mysterio, it did feel like that had resolved, and it felt like that's where the movie should have ended. Mm-hmm. Obviously, like, I think that was the point, because then the next part takes over and we realize that Mysterio is actually a villain. So it did feel like in a normal setting that would have been the end to that movie. It felt like, at least that's how I felt. And then there was the second half of that movie.
Yeah. And again, I don't think for me that was a problem. I thought it was like, it was nice just because I got to see the growth of this version of Spider-Man, which I think, like, we talked about Homecoming a bit, or we did a full episode on it. My takeaways with Homecoming was that I like Tom Holland a lot. He's my favorite Peter Parker. He's my favorite Spider-Man. But I didn't love the over-reliance on tech and the inheritance, I guess, from Homecoming of, like, Tony built you the suit, here's all these options, here's all these things. What I really loved about Far From Home, though, was, I guess, Peter acknowledging that criticism, I guess, and feeling like he was living in a shadow and trying to step out of it and be Spider-Man because he's not Iron Man. And then there's that line that Happy tells him, he's like, you're never going to be Iron Man. So I liked that arc a lot for Peter. And more specifically for Peter in this movie, I love that he kept getting beaten down, and he kept having bad luck, and he kept just having to struggle with the decision of be a normal person, be a superhero, because that is just so inherent with Peter Parker that the way I view the character, that I felt the MCU Spider-Man didn't touch on yet. So seeing it in this made me very, very happy.
Right. I guess my biggest issue with this movie is in its story, in that is so totally, completely predictable. And I think that's so disappointing for me, because the giant twist in the end of Homecoming, where it's revealed that Vulture is Liz's father, is so satisfying and caught everyone off guard.
Yeah.
Where the reveal of Mysterio as a villain is totally predictable, and you're supposed to... If you've read any comic or know the character at all about Mysterio, you already know that he's a villain. And you already know that he's good with special effects and illusion. And as soon as you meet the character in this, it's like, well, I know he's going to be a bad guy, so what's the point? And that just kind of really disappointed me.
Yeah, I can see where you're coming from there. Like, I think there's a discussion to be had also about the way the film was marketed, because they were sort of tricking us, I guess, but they didn't trick me, you know?
Yeah.
It was like, oh, multiple dimensions, different version of Mysterio. This is after the snap happened. Anything could be possible right now. Who knows what the side effects were? So I went into the movie, I was like, honestly, I'll be more surprised if he turns out to be a hero. Because, I mean, it's just like, I feel like with Spider-Man movies, the villain is always going to have like a tie to Spider-Man.
Yeah, it is a lot more personal, his villains.
Yeah, but with Mysterio, it was like I saw what they were trying to do, and I think because knowing it like about the character when I went in and knowing about the illusion stuff specifically and the trickery, it kind of like took the weight out of the punch, you know?
Yeah, it totally did, and I love Jake Gyllenhaal in this, don't get me wrong. I think he was amazing in this. I just think he's totally wasted in this role because he's dead now, or maybe.
Or is he?
We actually don't know. Yeah, exactly. But for all intents and purposes, right now, he's dead.
Yes.
And it's really disappointing because you did get to see him in the hero role, quote-unquote hero role, for half of this movie. And God, he was so good as a hero. And it's really disappointing because if you know anything about Jake Gyllenhaal in Spider-Man, he was rumored, or like in talks to play Spider-Man in the original Sam Raimi universe in Spider-Man 2 because Tobey Maguire was hurt after doing, I think it was Seabiscuit after Spider-Man 1, and like it was questionable whether he'll come back for Spider-Man 2.
Mm-hmm.
So Jake Gyllenhaal was supposedly supposed to play Spider-Man, but that didn't happen. So in this, you kind of got to see that, like, what he would have been like maybe as an older Spider-Man or even as a regular hero in the MCU further on. I would have loved to have seen him as an actual hero in Phase 4. I think he, as Jake Gyllenhaal, definitely could have led this next phase of Marvel, and it's really disappointing, for me at least, that he only got one movie out of it.
Yeah, I see where you're coming from there too. And another thing I wanted to touch on with the twist moment was I feel like the reveal, it wasn't trying to be a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it was very natural, and it was like, it wasn't some like dastardly like sort of. I love the way the Vulture reveal happened, but it was like so tense. It was almost shot like it was a horror film in some places.
Oh yeah.
But the like, as far as Quentin's character, seeing the way he acts and that the just concept of him being an actor the whole time and playing up the hero role when he's really this like insane scumbag, I thought Jake Gyllenhaal nailed a really like solid balance between trying to be the hero. Because the thing is, when he first got introduced as Mysterio, I was like, Jake Gyllenhaal seems like he might be like phoning in some of this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But seeing the way that his character progresses and seeing that they were doing the ruse, just made me get like, oh no, he was acting that whole time, so of course it's gonna be like, if he's just this SFX guy, he's gonna be kind of like awkward. But and like playing up the Thor image, I guess.
Yeah, I will say, going back to that reveal moment, I think that was, I've never had a big eye roll moment in the MCU as much as I did in that scene.
Really?
Which is really sad to say. Yeah, I thought that was just totally like everything that they showed with the characters in previous MCU movies, especially with the guy from Iron Man, just like the lab assistant. I thought that was just like so shoehorned and just so like you didn't need to do that. I didn't need to see these people in like other MCU movies. I didn't need to see Jake Gyllenhaal like in Civil War like backstage being like, oh, he foiled my plan. I'm like, that's so silly. Like, you could have just, it was just so exposition heavy, and it was just like, I don't care. I just did not care, and I thought it was so silly.
I definitely think if it was any other movie, it would have bothered me way more. But the tone of Spider-Man, it felt like it was a natural sort of moment. The scene I thought went on a little too long about like the, and you were wronged, and Tony was a horrible person to you. But I see where they were coming from with that kind of approach post Endgame of like, hey, yeah, Tony still has a bit of his legacy that's very bad. Like, he was kind of a terrible person for a little while, and there's people that were still wronged by that.
Even in Civil War.
Exactly, yeah. And now that he's gone, these people have the perfect opportunity to capitalize on I guess, tarnishing his image or getting revenge. It's easier to get revenge on Iron Man once he's dead, you know? But yeah, like overall, I really liked Mysterio. I always thought Mysterio had a really cool background, just based on what my interests are and knowing how some of that Hollywood stuff works with special effects and editing and illusion, quote unquote illusions. I just thought that was always a cool concept for a character, specifically for a villain.
Right.
So seeing the way they executed that, I thought was awesome.
Yeah, I did like Mysterio, I will say. I just feel like Jake Gyllenhaal was wasted, but that's kind of my only issue with the character.
I also loved the illusion scenes, like the trickery sort of thing of towards the end of like the weird psychedelic Spider-Man everywhere thing.
It was very Batman Arkham-esque, like with Scarecrow.
Yeah,
I thought that was awesome.
That was very cool. I love some of the imagery there too. Was way darker than I was expecting.
The dead
Tony with like the skull face and the bugs crawling on him. I was like, dang,
yeah,
this is cool.
That was really cool. That was actually really cool. I did appreciate that. Something I really disliked about this movie. We can agree that this is half high school movie, half superhero movie, right? Would you say that? So if it's a high school movie, if it's a John Hughes-esque 1980s movie, which is like kind of the vibe that they're going for with Homecoming and this, it has to be funny. And I did not think this was funny. I think most of the humor did not land, and I thought it was just me, but the entire audience, and this is just anecdotally, the entire audience in my theater wasn't laughing. And it was like, for any MCU movie, there are some funny moments, and it was just so weird not hearing anyone laugh at any of the jokes in the movie. And it was like very surprising to me. I've never experienced that in an MCU movie.
That's interesting, because hearing you say that, there's nothing that comes to mind of like the great joke from the movie. But I was definitely like having a good time and laughing a lot, or at least consistently, not like heavy laughs or anything on like Guardians or Thor level. But there was definitely some moments, but yeah, I can't think of anything.
I really dislike the teachers in this. I think that was just like
the witches
way
guy?
too much. Yeah, like just totally unneeded.
That was so funny. I loved that. Because the thing is, I love this. It was very subtle, but like when he got control of Edith, and he could see people's web history before the witches joke started. I think you mentioned witches once.
Yeah.
About like, oh, Europe has witches, and then if you look over, you see like a conspiracy article about witches. I thought that was very funny. Also, okay, I was wrong. There is something that I thought was very funny, like hilarious. The opening of the film with Gone But Not Forgotten.
Oh, the In Memoriam.
That was so fun, because the thing is, they nail that like horribly inconsistent amateur high school like video humor so well. And they did it in Homecoming also with the newscast, and seeing it here again and using that to explain the logic of the blip and the snap, I thought was so funny. Like, yeah, it was just in there to explain why they were still in high school, but if you're gonna do exposition, I thought that was a very funny way to do it.
Yeah, and it's funny you just mentioned it, but they added the name for it now, the blip. Yeah, it's not called Snap because no one actually really saw him snap except for Thor. Think about it.
Yeah.
So yeah, we have a new name for it. I don't really
blip.
like it.
The blip beard.
It's weird to me, but whatever. Because I'm just so used to the snap.
Yeah.
But that really doesn't matter.
Okay. There's a few moments from that thing that were very, very funny. Like the band disappearing. And then just coming back in the basketball game, I thought was good.
Yeah.
The thing that killed me in that video, there were two things specifically. There was the picture of the candles with the Getty Images watermark over it.
Yeah.
And the picture of Vision killed me.
Oh, with the like very pixelated.
It was so funny, because the thing is, I've seen videos like this in like my high school production classes.
Yeah.
It was much respect to John Watts for nailing that.
Yeah, definitely. What? There's another thing. I keep saying negatives. I'm sorry, but
no, it's cool. It's a good way to continue the conversation before we get like deep into it.
I will say, on the whole, I loved Pete and MJ.
Oh yeah.
But I thought that him liking her in the very beginning of the movie immediately goes to Ned. This is the first thing he says. Was like, all right, I have a plan to tell MJ how I feel. And it's like, how do you feel about her? It's like, where did we didn't see his feelings progress for MJ in Homecoming.
Yeah.
If anything, we got a slight glance from MJ to Peter at the end of that movie, and that's kind of it. And then in this movie, he likes her all of a sudden. I thought that was really weird. And like, I know obviously he's supposed to like her.
Yeah.
But I would have liked to have seen that develop over the course of the movie, whereas in the beginning of the movie, he just likes her. I thought that was a little strange. I don't know if that bothered you at all, or you were just fine with that.
Yeah, it kind of just washed over me, like hearing him hop in. Just, I think, again, maybe because of the marketing, because I saw them like in Italy together or something. But yeah, I definitely see what you're coming from there. I thought their chemistry was great. I don't think it was like Emma Stone and Andrew Garfield great, but I think we'll get there.
Yeah.
But I thought it was very like adorable, I guess.
Yeah, and it's very unique too, because they're both really weird in like their own unique ways. Zendaya or MJ is like obsessed with death and like really dark things for some reason, but whatever. I think that's funny. And then Peter is just really incredibly awkward in like the most lovable way, and I think that's just a really funny pairing, where Peter is very peppy and very like bubbly, whereas MJ is very like down in the dirt. And it's funny seeing those two interact.
Yeah, the entire cast of the high school kids, I think, do a phenomenal job of representing that age. Like Flash trying to be an influencer is so funny.
Yeah.
I think that's way more. That was a much smarter decision to do that for that character and see the progression from Homecoming to this than it would have been to make him like the athletic bully guy. Yeah. Because that doesn't exist anymore, really, or in some cases. I liked Betty. The only one I didn't really like was Brad. I thought Brad was kind of weird.
Brad was useless, I think.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't know. It was just weird to me that he had that picture holding over Peter, which that like, oh, I took this photo of this dude in his pants, like without his pants on. I'm like, okay, you're weird. I'm not gonna listen to anything you say. Why do you have a picture of this dude that clearly he did not ask for? Yeah. And then like he just kind of gets written off, where everyone's just like, you're weird, Brad.
Yeah. Like I get there needs to be a conflict for the Peter and MJ relationship. But I feel like there would have been a couple other ways to do it.
Right.
You know, because even their like the climax of their whole back and forth with the her being like, I know you're Spider-Man. I feel like that could have been the conflict where Brad was used, you know?
Yeah.
Like maybe they have moments where they want to spend time with each other, but instead of Brad being the one to swoop in, he has to go do Spider-Man stuff. And then he has to keep making excuses. And then later on, it's like, I know you're Spider-Man. And then he's like, yeah, okay, I'm Spider-Man.
That reminds me of Mary Jane and Peter in Spider-Man 2, the Sam Raimi one. I think seeing like kind of a different take on that would have been cool as the conflict. But
I thought I liked the moment in there that was like that with the opera house. And her chasing after him, which... Like, I like the way they're treating this love interest for Peter. It's weird to call her just MJ because I feel like she's just a completely new thing. Like, an entirely new character, like, with elements of Gwen Stacy and MJ and, like, other people we've seen before. And, like, because her name isn't even Mary Jane, and it's Michelle Jones.
Yeah.
So, I'm interested to see where she goes with this franchise in the future. Because like maybe they want to stretch out Tom Holland for 10 movies, and then 4 Spider-Man movies from now we get like a Gwen Stacy moment from the comics, but with MJ.
Yeah,
and then
tough.
because we've been around her that long, and then adult Peter dates Gwen or something. I don't know, but I really liked their relationship and back and forth between all the high school kids except Brad.
Yeah, Brad kind of sucked.
I could have done with way more of the high school stuff too. I thought it was excellent.
Yeah, I agree. I do like the high school aspect of it. I wish it was a little more funny. It was a little too. Someone texted me this. It was a little too Disney, if you get what I mean. Like a little too slapsticky. I appreciate a little bit more Homecoming humor than I did Far From Home humor. But I don't think I dislike this movie. I just feel like I was a little too nitpicky about it. And I think I need to see it again with having my perceptions and my perspectives like honed and like kind of reserved. And like I don't know why I feel like I hold Spider-Man content to a higher level than I do anything else, because Spider-Man's one of my favorite heroes.
Yeah, so when you say slapsticky, do you mean like with the Mysterio stuff or just in general with the other stuff?
More
like
so with the teachers.
Okay.
Specifically, like I can think of the like direct example of the teacher like putting the camera on the pole and like taking a picture of him and falling in the water. It's like, I know that's about to happen.
Yeah.
Whatever. I don't know, just moments like that. I was like, yeah, you don't really need to focus on that much. And I guess they didn't, but it kind of just took me out of it personally.
Yeah, I definitely see what you mean with that. I thought all the humor with Peter was good though. Like I liked all of his moments, and I thought he had a nice back and forth with Ned, and the whole Bachelors thing I thought was good.
Right.
And him and May too, I thought they had a nice back and forth, which they did in the first one and they did in Civil War for that brief moment. But I really like the supporting cast for
I think
both of these movies.
Yeah, I think my favorite interaction that Peter has with anyone in this movie is Happy.
Yeah.
Because that's his direct tie to Tony. And Happy and Peter in Homecoming was very strained, had a very strained relationship. But in this, it's a lot more close, and it is a lot more focused on Peter's emotions rather than his physicality as Spider-Man. It is more about Peter than it is about Spider-Man, which is kind of reversed in Homecoming. But the scene specifically where Happy picks Peter up from the Netherlands and they're hovering above that tulip field, and Peter's in tears and Happy is just like giving him this like motivational talk. And it's like, wow, this is like Happy is the new Tony essentially for Peter. And I really appreciated that, and I thought that was done very well.
Yeah, I really like Jon Favreau in this. I like you said of their relationship in Homecoming to this, I thought the motivation to like get them to be friendlier with each other, being Tony, I thought felt natural, and it felt like it was a good progression. And hearing the way that he works with May now and that whole dynamic and what that brings into Peter's life, not just knowing Happy through Tony, I really liked his presence in it. I'm curious to see what the extent of it is going to be in the future. Like, will Peter Parker ever struggle with rent, or will Happy be able to write off company checks, to help out? Which, I mean, like, Peter and May in the MCU have seemed pretty well off so far. Like, lower middle class, but still, like, living in a pretty nice place, going to a good school, all that kind of stuff. So I'm curious to see if Happy's going to, like, keep helping out, which, if he is, good with me. Like, I think that works for this version of the character. I think this Spider-Man is not my favorite Spider-Man because of this, but I think it's a really strong factor in why I dig it so much because of the surrounding cast. I think that elevates Tom Holland. I thought Robert Downey Jr. and Chris Evans both elevated Tom Holland, and I think that was very smart to get him that young so he can, like, be propelled to reach those heights at some point. So having Jon Favreau around more, even, like, talking not in context of the film but context of set, I think is gonna go a long way for making Tom Holland still, like, feel like the goofiness of Spider-Man, but still having the like the gravitas that we know from Spider-Man, you know?
Right. Jon Favreau does have that tie to old school MCU.
Mm-hmm.
And I appreciate that he's still around.
Me too. I love that he's still in this.
Yeah, because he really kickstarted the MCU if you think about it. Him and Kevin Feige.
Did.
So, and he's still around and he still seems to enjoy it, and he's definitely giving that kind of like big brother aspect to Tom Holland and the new guys, especially Tom Holland. So definitely appreciate that.
My favorite scene in the entire movie, and I got misty-eyed twice. I forget what the other one is. We might get there at some point, but the one that definitely got me to be like, oh, okay, was when after he stitches him up and he goes to build the suit, and Happy's like, I'll take care of the music, and he turns on Back in Black.
I love Led Zeppelin.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, that moment too. I thought that was really funny.
Yeah, that was good.
But just seeing like him work on the suit, and like, sure, surface level it looks similar to the way Tony works, and Homecoming me could be rolling my eyes right now about like, oh yeah, sure, make him the new Iron Man. But yeah, he's going through holograms and stuff, but he was doing it in a very Tom Holland, Peter Parker way.
Mm-hmm.
Where it felt unique, and it felt like it wasn't him trying to be Tony, and he was prioritizing different things. And I really give Far From Home a lot of credit for making this version of Peter come into his own. And I thought that scene was like the cherry on top of the whole thing, because a lot of moments in the movie gave Peter the spotlight to show off his intelligence.
Yeah, and I did appreciate him kind of mirroring Tony's use of like that hologram to like build his suit. I think there was kind of like a direct shot from, I think it was like the first Iron Man, maybe the second Iron Man.
Yeah, when he did the thing.
Yeah, I thought that was cool. Because you do see like Tony's influence, but it is Spider-Man taking over his new kind of role.
Yeah, I thought that where Homecoming was a bit too much in that direction, I thought this like nailed it perfectly about like, yeah, passing the torch, because this is the next face of the MCU. Obviously it's going to be Spider-Man.
Mm-hmm.
So they have to have that in there somewhere, and I thought that, like, I was a little worried about it, because I remember when the image came out of him wearing the glasses and stuff, the Tony's glasses, I was like, oh no, what are we doing? But it was like, as soon as I saw him working on that kind of stuff, all my worries were gone. Like, I thought they handled this whole thing very nice.
Right. There's one part of this movie, Christian, I don't know how I feel about this.
Okay.
I don't know if you want to save it to the end.
I think we should save it till the end.
Okay, it's about the end credit.
Okay. Because there's a discussion I would like to have.
Well, there's actually 2 end credits, and I don't know how I feel about either of them.
Okay. Before we move on from the hologram suit customization, I'm pretty sure when he pulls up the file and he's like swiping through the suits of like the default ones that are already in there, when he pulls it up the first time and the immediate left one, I'm pretty sure is the Spider-Man PS4 suit.
It is.
It is?
Or it looks strikingly similar to it, yeah.
Yeah, because it's the same like spider design that goes into the shoulders.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was a nice touch.
Yeah, that is cool. I would recommend watching the new Rockstars video. I don't know if you follow them. They did a really good like Easter egg recap throughout the movie, and there's a lot of like tiny little touches. There's a lot of Easter eggs in license plate numbers.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like for example, when not Sandman, but like the sand element pops up, the license plate is like a date and number of the first time Sandman pops up in Marvel Comics.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's really cool. There's little touches like that's scattered throughout the movie.
Yeah, I think I would very much recommend seeing it again. Like, knowing what you're getting into, I feel like might help a little more.
Mm-hmm.
Because I told you I got spoiled for MJ knowing.
I think everyone did, because it was in that really terrible
that's the thing
trailer.
I was telling you about that. I was trying to be vague, but yeah, I feel like, I don't know, it was either because post Endgame I needed like something nice, or knowing some of the stuff that was going to happen, like you said, it was a little predictable. may have just eased my worries a little bit. So yeah, I think we got through what I wanted to say about Peter and Mysterio and the balance and the passing of the torch stuff. I'll say that there were a few moments specifically that I really liked where it was just like the very small character moments, like we touched on with Peter and MJ, Peter and Ned, and I really liked the moment on the rooftop with Peter Mysterio, because it felt like he was kind of getting closure from Tony there, because he was looking up to this guy who, like, overall look with his like hair and beard and everything, similarities to Tony, and I think that was intentional. So having that older brother father figure to talk to and sort of get some sort of safety net from, I thought was a good moment for just to see Tom Holland act, I guess.
Yeah, I did like that moment, but it was kind of cheapened for me, knowing that it's not genuine.
Yeah.
But in the moment it was, and in that moment I did love it. And Jake Gyllenhaal, maybe I'm biased, Jake Gyllenhaal is my favorite actor personally right now. So I love seeing him in anything, and he was really, like what you're saying, the big brother role in this.
Yeah.
And it's just so sad that he can't be an actual headliner for the MCU, because I think he would be, I think for me personally, as a Jake Gyllenhaal stan, I think he could definitely be the next Tony Stark, could be the next head of the MCU.
Would you be disappointed if he came back as Mysterio?
No.
Okay.
I would love it if he came back as another character, and they'd just be like, whatever, Jake Gyllenhaal is a different character, but that's not gonna happen.
Maybe he gets a DC gig, I don't know.
Maybe.
So yeah, I wanna, before we get into the post credits, do you think there's a chance that Mysterio pulled like a trick at the end? Because I know they hung on that shot of like his cold eyes for a while, but I'm not buying it. I think
it's more than likely that he is not dead.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think that you have three, including him, three of the Sinister Six already ready. You got Vulture, and you have Scorpion, who met in jail and are probably going to team up and plotting against Spider-Man. You have Mysterio, who has a huge vendetta against Spider-Man, and we'll talk about this, but has already revealed his identity. So that leaves three others. And it's very possible Tom Hardy's Venom, maybe, but, let's see, it leaves three opportunities for villains to take up the Sinister Six, and I think that'd be an awesome movie, and yes, I would absolutely love to see Jake Gyllenhaal return as Mysterio. And I think, honestly, he'd be a good leader in that.
So, this is what I wanted to say. I think for as long as we've known Sony has been trying to make a Sinister Six thing happen, Far From Home is on track to be the first Spider-Man movie to pass $1 billion in the box office. Which, like, how's that not happened yet?
Yeah.
I think they'd be foolish to just toss out a character they've already put the legwork in, where they could just fold him into that event film, Like, I think you're exactly right. I think they have some of the foundation laid for the Sinister Six already, so taking more time to put somebody else in for Mysterio, I don't know if they'd want to do that personally. I think that if they have the opportunity, they would just run with it the way it is.
Yeah.
And I personally wouldn't feel cheated if they did that, because I thought Mysterio, there's like a ton you could still explore with that character. Like you've been saying, I think Jake Gyllenhaal would be a fantastic addition to the MCU as a returning character. And Mysterio in this, I think, for me, I'd have to see it one more time, but I think he might be my second favorite on-screen Spider-Man villain.
Of people in the MCU or just of all?
Like Spider-Man villains as a whole on screen.
Okay.
Because for the way I do it is top 5 would be number 1 is Vulture, 2 is Mysterio, 3 is Doc Ock, 4 is what's his name, Willem Dafoe Norman, and then 5 Lizard.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah. Once you get down there, it's like I don't really care.
It's like it's Lizard or Venom or Sandman, one of them. Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah.
So I do think there's potential for him, and I hope he returns.
Yeah, I do too, because I think and I was saying this earlier and you were too, with Spider-Man villains, they are much more personal than most villains, I would say. Specifically towards Peter, there's usually an event in Peter's life that connects both Peter and Spider-Man. Mm-hmm. And you saw it in Homecoming with Liz and Vulture, and in this with Peter's trip and Mysterio, kind of like coalescing into that one kind of action piece. So I think it'd be really cool to have all of these characters coalesce into the Sinister Six, and I would love to see Mysterio return in that.
I would too, but I think there's also a very realistic aspect of what we see as what we get, because he could very well be dead because he already has his revenge.
Yeah, he won.
You know, he did win. It caught me off guard, so I think we should talk about this next. Mm-hmm. Oh, before we get into the post-credit scene.
Oh, let's talk about the best thing in the movie. Can we agree on that?
I hope we're talking about the same thing, man.
Yeah. Oh, we sure.
I wanted this so bad in Homecoming.
Mm-hmm.
Not even at the location that it was in this movie. I just wanted to see it. I'm so happy we got to see Spider-Man swinging through Manhattan.
Okay, we're talking about different things, but I do appreciate this scene.
I like because they closed the movie with swinging through the city again, which I loved.
And like Manhattan swinging.
Yes,
like
it's not like Queens. It's not like suburban New York. It's legit skyscrapers. Spider-Man going through. Loved that. I was so happy that was in there.
Mm-hmm. And it was a really sweet moment because he's on his way to see MJ.
Yeah.
And he's basically like, this scene serves as visual eye candy for the audience to just see Peter just running around and swinging, and then eventually he picks up MJ, who does not like swinging around New York.
Yeah,
which makes sense.
I like that he was late too.
Yeah,
because I'm like, oh, this is what I sign up for with Spider-Man.
Definitely
never works out.
Mm-hmm.
What were you gonna say though?
I was gonna say the best thing in this movie is, of course, J.K. Simmons' return as
okay.
Jameson.
Yeah, I thought we were still talking about like the rest of the movie, not post-credit scene. So yeah, that was a scene.
That I was equally surprised, but also not at the same time. That makes no sense. But who else could play this character?
Yeah, and I'm glad that they realized that, and I'm glad that whoever needed to sign off on that agreed. Because like my choice, if they had to recast. I was saying Hugh Laurie I thought could be a good Jameson.
I could see that, yeah.
But like you can't top J.K. Simmons.
No, that is someone I could never see as anyone else on screen, at least. I thought the Spider-Man J. Jonah Jameson was good, but man, and I feel like this is the first example of an actor returning to a character. Maybe I could be wrong. That is in a different universe.
I think so.
Because I feel like that's pretty big.
Yeah, so let's set the stage here. So the post-credits scene, first off, good stylized credits. I always want to shout out a good one.
Definitely.
The last 3 were really solid. But yeah, so it comes back. We see the end of the MJ swinging scene. He lets her down. Already I feel unsettled because I'm like, oh no, why are we picking up like immediately after this movie ended? Mm-hmm. At first I thought it was going to be cute, but then it was just like going on too long. I was like, oh, what's coming? So seeing that announcement and the breaking news thing, is it a reporter first and then it cuts to the Daily Bugle thing?
Yeah, it's a report and then it's like, here's a snippet
news,
from the controversial dailybugle.net, which is basically InfoWars.
Yeah.
In this incarnation.
So it fades in, and it's J.K. Simmons. I was blown away by that.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, like we already said, you can't do better than him.
No.
Confused the hell out of me because when they said breaking news, and then J.K. Simmons shows up on screen, I'm like, are we gonna set up a Spider-Verse right now, and Tobey Maguire is gonna show up as like another Spider-Man in this universe or something? Mm-hmm. Didn't get that, but I wouldn't rule it out honestly now. But we get the moment of Mysterio. He gets his revenge. He reveals that Peter Parker is Spider-Man, and he used the soundbite of him saying "execute them all."
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. This is on my list of. I didn't write negative and positive. I wrote question marking positive because there were a few things I was uncertain about.
I feel the same as you.
Yeah.
Like, if you're kind of mixed on this, because I don't. It was fine in Homecoming where they left off with May knowing that Peter was Spider-Man. I thought that was fine because it's only for one character. That's it. That's fine. And I wanted to see where that went next. With this, it's the whole world knowing, and it's not on Peter's terms.
Yeah.
And I didn't like that. I don't know. I want to see where they're going with it, but right now I don't like that.
So in Homecoming, I like that he told Ned, and I was very happy they made May aware of it, because I think, like, if you haven't played Spider-Man PS4, mute for 2 seconds. I think that was a good way to handle it, because it's like, of course she's gonna know.
Right.
So getting Marissa Tomei to be like, okay, yeah, I figured it, or I didn't figure it out. I walked in. I thought that worked. I was fine with both of those because you can do interesting things with those relationships. MJ finding out, I was like, I think I was okay with it because she like put 2 and 2 together, and it makes sense that so many people would just be distracted anyway, and nobody cares about Peter except her because she likes him. So I was fine with that. I felt a little weird about it at first. I was like, you could have lied a little more and like try to cover it up and then just give up and be like, yeah, okay. But then my hesitation with that thrown out the window by the post-credit scene.
Yeah.
Because it was like, oh, well, I guess it doesn't matter now. Yeah, I just don't know how I feel. Like, we've seen 2 versions of Peter Parker trying to hide the identity. So, like, if they can do something new with it, maybe. Is S.H.I.E.L.D. going to issue a statement and be like, hey, Quentin Beck was a villain and this is propaganda, he's targeting this kid? Maybe. Could they backtrack?
It's weird because his name is out there.
Yeah.
Maybe if it was like, you could hear his voice and you can't see, because you can't see his head in that video that Mysterio put out. So maybe it's like, he's a kid, and maybe he's one of these kids that was on the school trip because there's Americans and they're in London. But the fact that it's his like actual name is like, I don't know. And it just struck me as something that I didn't like at the end of the movie, and I mostly didn't like it because they ended on it. And it was like, okay, well, now you have to wait another 2 years for another Spider-Man movie.
See, the fact that it was the post-credit scene makes me feel like they're not going to backpedal. But, like, at the same time, maybe they will because it was the post-credit scene. Like, I don't know. Because if it wasn't important enough to end the movie on that, then I feel like they could easily be like what I said, like S.H.I.E.L.D. puts a statement out or some other thing happens to negate it, but, like, his name's still out there, so you will have the crazy supervillains that try to go after him.
And you'll have people digging up stuff about Peter Parker now. Like, he's a high-profile person. Yeah, even if S.H.I.E.L.D.'s like, no, he's not Spider-Man, it's people's going to be like, well, he was in Washington, D.C. when Spider-Man was there. He lives in New York. Like, he was in Europe and all these places Spider-Man showed up, like, or Night Mikey showed up, I guess. Which I thought was funny.
Yeah, that was good. The thing that I immediately thought about after the reveal was what that's going to do to his relationship with MJ. So, like I'm conflicted, because if this is the way we get the the conflict between him wanting to be a celebrity or not a celebrity, like wanting to be Spider-Man and wanting to have a normal life. If this is the balance and this is the element they throw in here to get that conflict in the MCU, I'll give them a shot. But like, I really don't know, because the hidden identity is something that I feel like is important with Spider-Man.
Definitely.
And moving forward, like, why would he even wear a mask anymore? It just seems dumb.
Yeah, the only time in the comics that I thought and I'm not very familiar with comics, mind you, but the only time I thought they dealt with it really well was, I just read this actually. It's called Spider-Man Back in Black.
Mm-hmm.
Takes place right after Civil War, where he reveals himself to the world, sides with Tony for a bit, realizes he doesn't agree with Tony, goes on Cap's side, and then lives as a fugitive after that.
Mm-hmm.
Immediately after, he goes to this motel that Aunt May and Mary Jane are staying at, because people know about May and MJ, of course, at this point. Immediately in this series, and Aunt May is shot because someone is trying to assassinate Peter Parker. And basically Peter takes her to the hospital and basically hunts down people who are responsible. And it is a very dark series.
Mm-hmm.
And it is basically Spider-Man as Batman.
Is he wearing the symbiote?
What's that?
Is he wearing the symbiote in that
story?
Yeah,
he wears the suit. I think in this series, Black Cat had sewn together this suit because he got rid of the symbiote suit. So it basically represents the symbiote suit.
Okay.
So he's wearing this suit and basically hunting down the people who are responsible, basically almost killing people. And I think it's a really good alternative take on Peter that we almost never get in comics, where he's like angry and he's vengeful. And I think that would be interesting to see. I don't think Tom Holland is ready for that in his age.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think he's a little too young for that.
Yeah. I really am not sure how I feel about it, because clearly there's ways you can tell interesting stories with this, like you just brought up.
Mm-hmm.
Like him and MJ could be fighting because of it. Like, what's all the people on that street in New York going to think about that girl that was just swinging with Spider-Man, you know, immediately after he gets his identity revealed?
Mm-hmm.
But I do think that with the future of the MCU and, like, assuming Spider-Man is the face moving forward, like, I feel like this is something that would have worked, but it might be too soon. But, like, the fact that it's this early just makes me think that they really want to make this their own take on Spider-Man, which, hey, like, if he can make it good, then go for it.
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah, I'm just unsure.
Yeah, I am too. I'm definitely interested to see what they're going to do with it. I hope we get a Spider-Man movie sooner than 2 years. I think it's possible. I don't know, though.
This was the end of Phase 3, officially. I think we are definitely getting a Spider-Man movie in the next 3 years.
Oh, yeah. I expect by 2021 we'll get one, because 2017 and 2019 was Homecoming and Far From Home. And I know that's not an exact one-for-one. You should expect that, but Spider-Man is a huge property, so...
I'll go even further. I'll say we get 2 Spider-Man movies this phase.
Okay. Yeah, I could definitely see that.
Both with Tom Holland.
Yeah, that would be like Iron Man 2.
Yeah.
So.
I think that I think that's very realistic to see.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to find out some Phase 4 stuff at Comic-Con. We're going to find out more Phase 4 stuff at D23 in August. But we do get a little tease about the greater MCU as a future. At the end of the normal credits, when it's revealed that Earth Nick Fury, for who knows how long, has been Talos from Captain Marvel. I love Ben Mendelsohn. I thought he was amazing in Captain Marvel. I loved seeing him here.
Mm-hmm.
And this is interesting because I've seen some fan theories out there. So Fury, for all intents and purposes, died with Winter Soldier.
Right.
And he said, hey, I'm going to work on a few other things. So do you think every time we've seen Fury since Winter Soldier, it's been Talos Fury?
It's totally possible. Because he dies. So he dies in Winter Soldier. Yeah, 2014. I'm trying to even think of the times he comes back after that.
So he shows up in Ultron because he's like, you guys done messed up. And then he shows up. Yeah, he shows up twice in Ultron. And then after that...
It's just Infinity War, right? After that, at the end credits? Civil War, he's not in at all.
And he's with Hill in Infinity War.
Yeah. I think at least Infinity War, he is not himself.
Yeah. Because I was just thinking, because, like, if he pressed the button, like, he pulled out the page for Captain Marvel and it was Talos, that makes it even more layered. It's crazy.
Yeah, definitely.
Because remember, I told you that there was that fan theory that in the scene in Ultron when they're in Hawkeye's house and he cuts his sandwich in triangle shapes.
Yeah.
Because Fury and Captain Marvel was like, I can't eat toast if it's cut diagonally.
Mm-hmm.
People were like, oh, does that mean he's a Skrull?
Yeah.
Potentially, yes.
Yeah.
So you said you weren't a huge fan of that reveal?
No.
Hey, can you explain? Can you let me know why?
I don't like Skrulls, and here's why.
But do you like Talos?
Sure. Yeah,
Okay.
I like Ben Mendelsohn.
Okay.
I don't like Skrulls because at any point anyone could be a Skrull.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's just so cheap. I just don't like how they have that backdoor if they want to.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like they could absolutely abuse that if they really wanted to. Be like, oh, it wasn't him the whole time. And they're like, well, then that makes it doesn't make it as meaningful as I want it to be.
I agree with you.
I don't know if I felt that way exactly with Nick Fury in this, but I don't know. It's just, it takes away from it a little bit.
I agree with you if it would have been handled poorly or with a more major character.
Yeah, definitely.
Like, I don't think at any point they will even consider being like, oh, the Tony that snapped was a Skrull.
Mm-hmm.
Don't think they'd ever do that.
No.
Don't think they'd ever say Steve Rogers was a Skrull at one point. Do not think that.
Yeah.
I think that there is definitely a wrong way to do a reveal like that, but this one I thought worked very well because of the relationship that Fury and Talos had from Captain Marvel.
Mm-hmm.
I think since they are, like, buds, like, Fury trusting him enough to fill his role on Earth, I didn't feel cheated or anything like that.
Right.
Like, it made sense after seeing Captain Marvel.
Right. Didn't think it was terrible, and for the one thing that I did appreciate about it was that Talos went and took over Nick Fury's role when Nick Fury went off into space and is supposedly, I'm not too keen on this, but supposedly starting Sword, right?
Yes, I've read articles about this.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not super familiar with Sword. Did not realize until, like, pretty recently that Sword and Shield. Haha. But yeah, it looks like Sword is basically the interstellar version of Shield
Mm-hmm.
to deal with Thanos. And I guess at some point Shield reformed in some capacity.
Seems it, yeah.
And I think that might have been handled in Agents of Shield. I'm not super sure. But yeah. So that's the state of things now.
Yeah.
But yeah, I liked both post-credit scenes. I have questions about both that I'm glad I have questions, you know, because it's giving me more reasons to be invested in the future stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So, do you have any closing thoughts on the post-credit scenes or Far From Home in general?
Yeah. I seem more negative than I am probably about the movie. I loved the action in this movie, especially the final climax where they're on it's not London Bridge, but wherever they are in London.
The bridge in London.
Yeah, the one that's not the London Bridge.
Yeah.
I thought that was excellent, and I loved seeing a competent Spider-Man. because I feel like we haven't really had that too much in the MCU, but he was really developing into his own in this, and I loved seeing that in this movie. And that left me on a high note, and then the end credit kind of drew me on a low note. So I came out of the theater feeling a little bit negative, and I think that's probably because of the end credit scenes.
Mm-hmm.
But on the whole, I did like the movie. I wouldn't say I disliked it, and I definitely want to see it again now that my expectations are in check. I think even after seeing it again, I think I'll still like Homecoming better.
Mm-hmm.
But I think this is an enjoyable movie. It is lower on my rankings, which we'll get to as of now, but definitely want to see it again to see how I feel.
Yeah, I completely understand what like where you're coming from through this discussion. Like, I think you have a lot of valid points, and personally, I think that Homecoming was needed for me to sort of reevaluate what Spider-Man can/should be, and I think Spider-Verse also helped me with that.
Mm-hmm.
Because, yeah, like we talked about it a lot. I wasn't a huge fan of the tech stuff, but I think seeing that in Homecoming and seeing his growth in this one, I think fulfills an arc that I didn't necessarily think they would touch on. So I really appreciate that about Far From Home. I thought it was a nice epilogue to everything. Again, passing the torch. I love that it was very subtle, but like from a meta perspective and in universe, I thought they did a great job with setting up Spider-Man to be the future, and I just had a very good time with it. I thought it was a great road trip high school film, and I could have done with way more of the high school stuff. The action was really good, and it felt contained, but the stakes were still there, and I know that's something that so many people, reviewers or critics, want to bring up with movies that come after an Avengers. It's like, oh, is anybody going to care? And I think this just proves it, that if the characters are good enough and if it's endearing enough to have an investment, then people will care.
Mm-hmm.
So, would you like to rank? We haven't done this in a long time. Would you like to rank?
Yeah. I'll start off my ranking. Wow, 23 it is now, huh?
Yeah. So, is this the same ranking that you had on our movie review portion of Excelsior, or has it been modified since then?
I haven't touched it since, so
Okay.
It should be about the same. So coming in at number 23 is The Incredible Hulk. Side note, I was in Princeton, New Jersey at some used Blu-ray music CD shop or whatever, and I was really tempted to get the Blu-ray of Incredible Hulk because instead of blue, it was green.
It's so
and
stupid.
I thought that was cool.
I love
and
it. I love it.
I'll probably never see that again. I should have gotten it, honestly, but that movie sucks, so who cares? Number 23 is The Incredible Hulk. Number 22 is Thor: The Dark World. Number 21 is Doctor Strange. Number 20 is Thor. Number 19 is Ant-Man. Number 18 is Iron Man 2. Number 17 is Iron Man. Number 16 is Captain America: The First Avenger. Number 15 is Captain Marvel. Number 14 is Iron Man 3. Number 13 is Spider-Man: Far From Home. Number 12 is Ant-Man and the Wasp. Number 11 is Avengers. Number 10 is Guardians 2. Number 9 is Age of Ultron. 8 is Thor: Ragnarok. 7 is Black Panther. 6 is Guardians of the Galaxy 1. 5 is Spider-Man: Homecoming. 4 is Captain America: The Winter Soldier. 3 is Avengers: Endgame. 2 is Avengers: Infinity War. And 1 is Captain America: Civil War.
Very nice. For the sake of continuity with the show, I'm adding Far From Home to my ranking that I ended with Infinity War because I marathoned them all with my girlfriend because we wanted to do that to go into Endgame because she hadn't seen all of them. So I'm rearranging a couple things quick because I want to just have it in the same ranking I left off with.
Right.
After Endgame. So 23 is The Incredible Hulk. 22 is Dark World. 21 is Iron Man 2. 20 is Captain America 1. 19 is The Avengers. 18 is Thor. 17 is Doctor Strange. 16 is Iron Man. 15 is Ant-Man. 14 is Captain Marvel. 13 is Iron Man 3. 12 is Ant-Man and the Wasp. 11 is Civil War. 10 is Age of Ultron. 9 is Guardians of the Galaxy. 8 is Ragnarok. 7 is Black Panther. 6 is Infinity War. 5 is Guardians 2. 4 is Homecoming. 3 is Far From Home. 2 is Avengers Endgame. And 1 is Winter Soldier.
Nice.
I feel differently about that list reading it out loud now because I had some strange experiences revisiting some of them again. Like right now, on my current up-to-date ranking, Guardians is 3 and Far From Home is 4. Like Guardians 1 is 3.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. I love that every time I go back to these movies, I have different opinions on them.
Yeah, I agree. Most notably for me is Iron Man 3. I hated that when that came out, and I actually really like that movie now.
Yeah. So, that does it. That's a discussion on Spider-Man Far From Home. Like I said earlier, next week, presumably if Pat is back from his assignment, we will have the final episode of Excelsior in this run of the whole thing. We'll be reviewing single issues of a couple comic books that we each want to bring to have a discussion on. So look forward to that. But of course, if you want to catch up on the history of Excelsior, check out our other Marvel Cinematic Universe reviews. Those are all on Spotify and iTunes and other podcast services. It's on YouTube in a playlist on youtube.com/joyclicks. Jack, if people want to follow you, where can they follow you?
You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at FascinatedJack.
Very nice. If you want to follow me on Twitter, you can follow me at Chris N. Buckley. Going to be tweeting more about, I guess, whatever Marvel stuff happens, future projects on JoyClicks, other stuff like that. But, any other closing thoughts? Anything else?
Definitely excited to see this again. I will say that. I want to stress that. Because it's pretty, like, mid-tier Marvel for me right now. And I think I might think that going out of it as well. Mm-hmm. But, hopefully a little bit higher. Right now it's below. It's funny because it's right next to and below Ant-Man the Wasp, which you
also
it was that
mid-tier.
Yeah, that was the movie that came out after Infinity War last year. And Far From Home was the movie that came after Endgame.
Interesting.
And I love Ant-Man and the Wasp.
Me too.
I think it's perfect mid-tier Marvel, and that's kind of what I wanted after Endgame.
Yeah.
But I guess I'm a little bit more negative, it's seemingly, for Far From Home. I just love Spider-Man, and like I said, I think I just hold it a little bit higher in standards than other things, I suppose. So.
Yeah, Spider-Man's my favorite superhero, so I'll take whatever I can get, sift out the bad, enjoy the good.
Definitely.
So, that does it for movie reviews, though, and Excelsior rankings. The next Marvel movie is going to be presumably Black Widow in February, so look forward to that. But until next time, Excelsior.
Excelsior.